All right, so last time we were talking with Dr. Emily Rice about brown dwarf stars, but the reason we both know Emily is from running Astronomy on Tap.
Yeah, so Astronomy on Tap started in New Haven in New York a few years ago. It's fun astronomy discussions and lectures and games in a bar. And it's since spread around the world to a number of countries, over 50 different cities. Rachel and I started one down in Austin when we were there. And yeah, Emily is one of the sort of overall worldwide organizers of Astronomy on Top PBD, or Pale Blue Dot, as we call it.
Yeah, I keep changing it. I started with WW for worldwide, and then I did Pale Blue Dot for a little bit. Now I'm doing HQ. Like I feel like the HQ is a little bit more obvious. Like I don't know. Yeah, that's the astronomy on tap is very fluid and very organic, which is very very nice. I would never call it a lecture though.
Presentation is the word that I use, I guess, more often.
But yeah, the astronomy on tap is all about getting scientists out of their comfort zone, but into the comfort zone of the general public, basically. Because there's this huge barrier to entry of people that, like, wouldn't spend a Friday evening going to a lecture at a university or an academic institution or something like that.
Kind of my favorite thing about it is that it gives it's a different image of scientists than we're used to seeing in the media, and people can come and hang out in a bar and they see that the people who are actually really producing science, for the most part, in their 30s. It tends to be grad students, postdocs, or very early career faculty who are actually doing science. And that's very different to what we're used to seeing in movies.
Yeah. I like the fact that, that we usually have multiple presenters too. And that also, I like that the Astronomy on Tap kind of adds the dialogue aspect to the discussion of science. Like sometimes you can just have different people talking about different things, but sometimes I like to organize events that's like people presenting opposite sides of the understanding of some aspect of space or something like that.
Yeah, Rachel and I have done Astronomy on Tap events where we've had, someone talking about looking for dark matter and observations and telescopes and experiments, and then followed by someone who does dark matter theory and, building a model inside of a computer and trying to solve this huge mystery of the universe from two very different, aspects, using two very different skill sets, but both, being considered astronomers doing cutting edge research.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I also think it's really fun that because it's monthly, people kind of get regular updates on what's going on. I think one of my favorite things that ever happened was when I was giving a talk about my work in gravitational lensing, and I was showing another result someone had in the field of an exploding star, so one of your friends, Jeff. Mm-hmm. And that we've seen multiple images of the same thing, and people have made predictions of when it was going to come back. And I obviously was making fun of them and saying, oh, these predictions obviously aren't going to turn out to be real. And I had to come back the very next month and say, turns out they were right, they found it.
Yeah, I just take this directly to the public. That's the other thing, is that it's really unfiltered. It's like astronomy unfiltered. It comes directly from the scientists and directly, sometimes from the people that are doing it, sometimes from their friends or their office mates or something like that. The Astronomy in the News is a really popular segment that a bunch of different satellites have done, which is cool.
Yeah, I think we started that, didn't we?
I think so.
Oh,
I think so.
Yeah, we given that name.
Yeah, another thing that I think, Emily, you're sort of hinting at also, and Rachel as well, about sort of interacting with the public and having that dialogue is one thing that Rachel and I have pushed, and a lot of other places have pushed, is not only we have one or two hosts and maybe two or three presenters, but we have other local astronomers just kind of hanging out in the crowd, our space cadets, our volunteers. That obviously help with, selling merch and setting up AV and that kind of stuff, but also just they have their name tag and they're identified as an astronomer, and they just wander in the crowd and they're just chit-chatting with locals and hanging out with people.
Yeah, we've done sometimes, instead of hello, my name is stickers, we've done ask me about blank sticker. And so you can put in, black holes or exoplanets or exploding stars or whatever you want. And that way, that is a little bit of an icebreaker for the public to know, what you're kind of most willing to talk about.
So another thing you do that really pushes the envelope of science communication is your Startorialist blog, which I think is fantastic. Do you want to talk about that?
Thank you. Yeah, you're like a superstar for that too. Yeah, I don't even know, I guess it's still communication, but it feels like so much more than that. And so I wish there was a a bigger word that I could think of to encompass it. So Startorialist, weirdly enough, they have kind of a similar genesis, because when I started doing Astronomy on Tap about 5 years ago in New York City, I kind of very quickly started out wearing kind of star-inspired stuff. And I think it was at an Astronomy on Tap event, actually, talked to Summer Ash about it, who was an astronomer in New York City as well. And she's like, I'm also super interested in this. Like, I see it all over the place, and, I have a bunch of this stuff. And I was like, why don't we start a blog? Like, then we don't have to buy everything. Like, we can start a blog. We can kind of, I know, right? You know how this ends. Like, we can kind of record everything, like curate, share. We won't have to buy everything. And I honestly, like, I thought it would end at some point. Like, I thought we'd be able to go through, find all the ModCloth dresses, find all the, all of the leggings and things like that, like post everything. And then eventually the fad would die out and we'd get to the end of the internet.
Talk about doing the fact that it should have ended at some point, but there's, people, between Etsy and people like Rachel who sew their own clothing from any kind of pattern, to even, runways in Paris and Milan, there's astronomy themed like couture, which is so awesome when it pops up on Startorialist.
I think it's so great. Like, it's more than communication, because it's like what we wear. It's how we represent ourselves. It's also what we make. Like, I have to admit that, like Startorialist has contributed to this, I call it the expanding universe of astrofashion. Like, we are some of the dark energy, because now we start to collaborate with designers. And, this dress, actually, the Purple Jupiter, I think the woman who makes it is called Holly. Her name is Holly, and she has a company called Shinova. And I just tossed a bunch of images at her. And one of them that I tossed at her was this beautiful Hubble image of Jupiter. And I said, but, it's kind of brown. Like, wouldn't it be nice if it were purple? And she made this Purple Jupiter dress, and I'm like, ah! And I love it.
I think that's really cool. And obviously, we're both big fans of, what's the noun? Startorialism?
Yeah, Startorialism.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with us about really cool, innovative ways of bringing science to people. So, cheers.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.